All right, hello. Hopefully my voice holds up. I've been coughing a little bit. So, we're going to look at still lifes before still lifes, although we're going to look at still lifes as well. And the reason why I'm doing this is to prepare us for looking at pop art, which had a lot of still lifes. So, Rachel Roush is a Dutch 17th century artist, and she's known for particularly her paintings of flowers. Right now, there's a huge show. I think it just closed in Boston. It's going all over the United States, which should have happened a long time ago. Um, and since the turmoil of uh, the turmoil of that resulted in the Me Too movement, and Black Lives Matter movement. Um, so there's much more of an interest in one, female artists, and two, artists of color. And so museums are really making an effort to go back into the history of art and look for more women artists. And I think Rachel Roush would be somebody that was well known before that effort, but it's nice to see. With Vase of Flowers, one thing that you should know is that not all of these flowers would be able to bloom together. So even though you're thinking to yourself, well, geez, must be a lot of, there's a lot of, it's very realistic. In some ways, it's not. Okay, I just looked up how to say this guy's name, Peter Klaus. It's not. I always used to say Peter Klaus, but it's Klaus. This is still life with Turkey Pie. He's another Dutch 17th century artist. And when I was in college, what used to be talked about a lot was that it's not necessarily all about just showing the material wealth of the Dutch in these still lifes. It's actually forming kind of a critique that you shouldn't think about the abundance of your world, and instead you should be thinking about um, your afterlife, and therefore you shouldn't be materialistic. This is a work by Anne Vallier-Costier. It's a still life, mackerel glassware, a loaf of bread, and lemons on the table with a white cloth. There's a lot of stuff in there. I think it's absolutely stunning. She was one of only two women artists to be allowed into the Royal Academy. The other one was Elizabeth Vigée Lebrun. And what Costier is known for is really solely her still lifes. And yeah, it'd be interesting to know if she was considered an equal to Lebrun, because Lebrun was the court painter for Marie Antoinette. And we should mention from the outset that still lifes are seen as a lower form of subject. Of course, the highest form is history paintings, but I still love them. Well, I guess it doesn't matter what my opinion is in this case. And then this is Chardin. Chardin was an artist of the Rococo age, but he really did things differently. He painted a lot of the lower working classes, and he also just made stunning, beautiful still life. And this one is Jar of Apricots. Okay, so Melendez is the quintessential still life painter of the 1700s. And I've seen actually an exhibition of his works before in LA, and each one of them is just really done at an incredible high level. The surfaces are just wonderful. He tried to get away from still life painting for a while because, again, it's considered sort of a lower topic in art, and then he went back to it. He wasn't successful, as I think he tried to be a portrait painter for a while. Raphael Peale is the most important still life painter in American history. That seems like a bold statement. I'll go with it. This is still life with fruit, cakes, and wine. And he, of course, was a part of the very famous Peel family. That he is just known for his works like this. And is this one at the... I don't think this is the one that's at Mia. I can't remember. All right, and then here's Audrey Flack. She just passed away recently. Maryland Still Life Vanitas Trompe l'oeil Illusionism. Very shiny, glossy paintings of still lifes from the common culture, lots of knickknacks. We actually have, I think we have a documentary on her. I'll have to look that up. This is Wayne Thiebaud, and he's known for primarily his paintings of fruit and desserts, more desserts than anything else. And instead, I thought I'd put in here the 4 pinball machines. He lived a very long time. He was very prolific, lots and lots of work produced in his time, and was a consummate teacher at one of the UC schools. Yeah. He's also did some landscapes that are a lot of fun. Okay, now we're going to go way, way back in time. And so we kind of had that section just before this was my favorites. Now we're looking at Roman, Pompeii, floor mosaics. And having just been lucky enough to be in Pompeii in December of 24, it's a fascinating place. Of course, Pompeii was destroyed by a volcano, and they're still digging up parts of it as we speak. And these floor mosaics are really well known as a part of Roman culture. Mosaics was one of the most important mediums for the Romans. And then here you can see the floor. So you might have thought it was just something that was a mosaic, put on the walls, but it's actually not. Okay. And then here is, I think, some more stuff from Roman history. Yep. Okay, so still life with silver tray and prunes, dried figs, dates, and glass of wine. And then a branch of peaches from Herculaneum, which is another location in Roman history that was buried. It's kind of seen as the second, if I remember right, it's seen as the second fiddle to going to Pompeii. Okay, so now we're going to look at illuminated manuscripts, and illuminated manuscripts were a very big art form in the Middle Ages, but it also carried through into the Renaissance time period. And this is the Limburg brothers, month of January, and what you're seeing here is a banquet, and if you think about it, kind of if you were to focus in, you would say that or if you're focusing in on the table at least, you could actually get a sense of what the diet was like in this time period in 1416. I've seen art historians do that before, and it's a really interesting way to look at art history. And then here's another one with all kinds of objects in the foreground to this look at the putting on the cross of Jesus. And so this is now more going into still lifes before still lifes. In other words, there's still life sections of these various different paintings that I'm going to show you, but they're obviously not going to be labeled as still lifes. So here we go. Christian flowers. I know this one down below in the middle is the sword lily, and that's about sorrow. And this is an Annunciation scene. And then what else do we have? Christian flowers. I can't see it very well. I guess it's in the background, kind of on. Is it a bench back there? Yeah, that's one chunky baby. So this is Italian Renaissance. The other one was Northern. And then here's Madonna with the rosary, which is really interesting. I never learned how to do the rosary in my Catholic upbringing. But I know that you say certain things for each bead, and I think the narratives that are above in those circles, I think they're connected to what you imagine when you're doing the rosary. That could be totally off, but I'm going to go with it anyway. All right, now let's look at portraits. So Hans Holbein was one of the most skilled portrait painters of all time. For me, he ranks in first or second. Of course, he was the court painter for Henry VIII's court, and there's 3 carnations, some rosemary, and a sprig of smaller and not easily identifiable flowers. I'm glad I put those notes in there. I wouldn't have known what to say. So one thing about Hans Holbein is it's almost photorealistic how he does his faces. So that's that. And also just all the curious objects that are surrounding this guy are wonderful. Oh, here's actually a close-up of them. So one way that you try and fool the eye is to have paper tacked to the wall, and that's what they're doing there. Okay, what about the fruit in this Botticelli piece? This is a combination of bright red cherries, plums, and what appears to be figs. Aha, there you go. Now, in this one, Jesus is reading because he was more godlike than human-like. I mean, there's 2 ways of looking at it. That way, or he was more human than godlike. I kind of like the second one, where he actually was more human. But, that's what's going on in this one by Botticelli. Okay, so the king of fruit, so to speak, is Carlo Crivelli. He's my favorite Italian Renaissance artist. And you can always tell it's his work because there's going to be some fruit surrounding, in this case, the Madonna and Child. And this is a triptych. I can't see it very well because when I do these recorded lectures, it's kind of a small image. There's St. Jerome on the right for sure with his lion. And then I'm not so sure what's going on with the saints to the left. Part of it must have been destroyed, which is sad. And there's some garland and such as well. And then this is a very strange one. This is the vision of the Blessed Gabriel Ferretti. And so he must have been a monk that had a vision of what looks to be... Gosh, I can't see this very well. I don't know what is in that flying thing. It looks like, you know what? Why don't I get my glasses on? That would help. It looks like it's a Madonna and Child. And then you've got tons of fruit hanging, classic Crivelli. And then this one is Stephen, whose martyrdom was being stoned. But then where is there any fruit in this one? I don't think so. Oh well, that's fine. There's just stones, I think. Okay, let's go do some more here. Yikes. All right, I gotta move on to Oh, the last Crivelli, which is really strange. I oftentimes show this one on tests. There, it's showing the whipping of Jesus to the left, and I don't know. It's just some people with a processional cross on the right. Lots and lots of fruit. It's a very, very strange painting, to say the least. Now, Crivelli is a part of what I call the freaks of the Renaissance. They're artists who are making their works outside of the main urban areas of Italy, like Milan and Venice and Florence and Rome. So there you go. Okay. Does everything have to be about Jesus? No. But apparently, yeah, okay, great. These two aren't. Okay, good. So we're looking at Francisco Melzi, who was a pupil of Leonardo da Vinci. Now, would I be able to tell that by just looking at this painting? Maybe. What characteristics? Well, we've got atmospheric perspective, which is totally Leonardo da Vinci. But, other paintings would have that as well. I think a little bit of the modeling of the figures probably would be, introduced or connected to Da Vinci. All right, and then we've got this one. This is such a strange one. So she's in a bath. Her child is being nursed by a nursemaid. And then it looks like there's another child near the bath. And then, I don't know, there's just kind of a woman in the background. I think the juxtaposition of the nude woman and then the breastfeeding is very odd. And there's some fruit and such to the left, which would make it a still life before still lifes. Okay, so now we're looking at the Holy Sacrament altarpiece, okay? And there's various different narratives going on in each panel, so it would be a polyptych. Obviously, in the middle is the Last Supper. And then the other ones are kind of, looks like kind of obscure narratives, I would say, in my unhumble opinion. The Last Supper is much rarer in the Netherlands. That's interesting. So in the Northern Renaissance, there wasn't as much a focus on the Last Supper. The various glasses and metal vessels are absolutely of the artist's period. There you go. Makes sense. Okay. Then you've got Feast in the House of Simon. Okay, so I guess the sort of theme here, food and tabletops, would be that if you took all the humans out of this scene, you would have just a still life on the table. I guess that's kind of the main theme of that. And this one's always a very curious one. So she's got a fly on her hair wrap. The I think it's cherries and the bread are very well done. He looks pretty serious. So it's actually a portrait of the artist and his wife. The couple were respectively 36 and 27 years old. Is this a slice of apple or cheese? I'm thinking it's cheese, but that could be just me. Okay, that's kind of a fun one. All right, so artists repeat themselves all the time, and so that's what we're seeing with Gerard David with his Virgin and Child with Milk Soup ×2. He probably used the same cartoon. Or underdrawing or drawing on a paper that made his underdrawing, and there's really not too much of a difference between these two. One would be what the baby's holding, for sure. Also, what's on the table in the background is also seems to be changed. Is the landscape? The landscape's a little different for sure. Oh, what's up in the shelf is different. Yeah. Otherwise, I think the figures are very, very similar. Well, he's wearing sort of a see-through shirt thing on the left and not on the right. Okay, so there's a lot of interesting things going on there. Okay, so now it's Annabelle Carracci's The Bean Eater, a very, very famous piece. Again, it's on the still life is on the table. There's onions, there's bread, beans, so on and so forth. Okay, so this is over the top. So this is another Dutch 17th century painter who's showing you the four elements. So we're going to start with earth and a lot of lettuce and cabbage and fruits. And then we go to the sea, the water. And there's the story of the miraculous drought of fishes in the background. And then air is a lot of poultry. Sorry, vegetarians. And then there's... Oh, there wasn't fire. What happened to fire? Okay, sorry. I skipped over the fire. Okay, Arcimboldo is one of the most beloved artists of all time. And of course, he's famous for his paintings of portraits that are made out of still life material, fruits and vegetables and such. And this is a portrait of somebody as Winter, which is a little unsettling in my mind. Okay, objects in the rooms. Oh, yeah. Okay, so who is in the painting? So it's St. Jerome here. This is from the Detroit Institute of Arts, actually. You know it's St. Jerome because of his attribute of a lion down below there. And then there's all of these objects that are overflowing in St. Jerome's study. Books. It looks like a vase. Yeah, all kinds of just little things there. Kind of looks like drumsticks below the the book holder, but I mean maybe that's just me. Okay, so that could be, especially the books in the background, could be cut off and become sort of a still life. Okay, so this is Cardinal Albergati. And I don't necessarily know why I put him in there. Because there's not really a still life going on. Maybe he's just a guest star. Okay, and then this one I think I've shown in class before. This is Death of the Miser. All the objects would then indicate that he's a miser, and thus his future is not very good. And then this is a portrait of a man by Albrecht Dürer, of course, one of the most famous artists of all time, known for his prints more than anything else, probably. And this is, again, I'm not sure why I put that in there. All right. Would have become a still life specialist if that sort of existed. I think what I'm saying here is that, again, we don't have still life as a subject matter until later in the history of art. And so all of these people, if they were allowed to do a still life, or would have been great still life painters. And this is The Calling of St. Matthew, which has some very interesting materials that you could use for a still life. And then I wanted you to think about who has the best hat. Apparently, the money changers and the tax collectors had these very funky fur hats. And so this is the money changer and his wife. And then here's another one, the money lender. I don't think that's his wife, though. Interesting. And then let's go to the tax collector again. It would be really interesting to see an art exhibition about these hats for sure. And then I think that's the last one, the two tax collectors. Yeah. Okay, so the next one is what's in the basket, and I think it's of interest to the cat. So this is Madonna and Child and the cat, or a cat, I guess, which is kind of interesting. And then I've got this again. Okay, so this is about shelf and niches, I think, which you see a lot of. Maybe. Okay. Okay. So, yeah, that was a continuation of the discussion of the tax collector stuff. Okay, and then this looks like it's a circumcision scene with some definite still life possibilities. Yes, okay. And then this is the St. Jerome, St. Cecilia altarpiece. St. Cecilia is she is the patron saint of musicians, and so all of those music instruments could be cut away and made into still life for sure. And then, oh, yeah, I screwed that up. So this is actually the circumcision. The one back that we thought was the circumcision was actually Nativity with St. Jerome and St. Nicholas of Tolentino. Sorry about that. Yeah, what's interesting about this one is the cabinet down below, which is happening, which is interesting. And I think there's some sort of, is it a dog or a cat that's looking into it? Okay, and then Vanitas is a skull that you oftentimes see people actually holding, or sometimes it's just as it is, like you see here. And the real message is that it contains symbols of death or change as a reminder of their inevitability. So it's about, take care of your life here, and because from dust you are, and to dust you shall return is really kind of the message with Vanitas. And here's the diptych. This would have been the coat of arms on the right side. And then Portrait of a Gentleman on the left with Madonna and Child. And one of the questions about these sort of diptychs is, did he go in and already there was made in the workshop of Lorenzo Lotto, was there already a made Madonna and Child, or did he ask for one that would be specific to be made, to be commissioned for his portrait? And I don't think anybody could ever tell which way it goes, but so both of this diptych on the back was what we saw with the family coat of arms and the Vanitas. Okay, that's it. We did it.